Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Africaness Parent Connect, our very own parent team talk show. As part of efforts to promote deep learning and positive behavioral changes in our parent community, and of course, amongst our children, we're keen to convene platforms for open discussion, sharing of experiences and perspectives, and practical application of the rich information which we have gathered from our guests, our experts, in the various webinars, podcasts, and other activities convened by the Africaness Parent team. In line with this, we will be convening quarterly reflective webinar sessions tagged Parent Connect, the first of which we're having today. During the sessions, our distinguished experts, panelists that I'm delighted to call my colleagues and friends, will be reflecting on the themes of the parent team activities over the past months, but in a very relaxed environment. The Reflective Parent Connect webinar discussions are designed to provide the following benefits to all of us. One, to highlight the key learnings from past webinars, podcasts, and other activities of the parent team. Two, to signpost to relevant resources on the parents' resource page, but also resources from other work streams within Africaness, such as the research team. Three, to address any outstanding questions from our participants in previous events. And finally, to chart an agenda for future activities, again in a relaxed setting. And so today, I'm delighted to have with us all of these friends, colleagues, experts in their own rights to talk about the past events that we CSC and A levels, which was one of the webinars we had in the past months. We'll also focus on cultural inclusiveness. We'll focus on racial stereotyping, and we'll talk about digital parenting and online safety for children. So to start us off on this issue of GCSE and A-level qualifications with OFCO, what you need to know as a parent, which was a webinar we had a few months ago. That webinar explored the latest developments in a range of regulated qualifications, including the GCSE and A-level grading and assessments. It also looked into the support available for children as they make decisions about their next steps, and it looks to providing parents with the information about how to support their children to cope with examination pressure. I know that Bumi was a participant in that webinar, and so Bumi, I'll start with you. As a participant in that session, and of course, as a parent with a lived experience in this regard, how would you advise other parents on how to support their children in connection with examinations, not only the GCSEs, but any exams that they might be faced with and the related pressures? What is your advice on some of the most common questions and concerns that parents often have in relation to exams, including how grades are calculated, what factors can impact them, and how to interpret results, and perhaps could you signpost us to relevant resources in this regard?
Right. Thank you so much for that question. And that's quite loaded, to be honest. I'll try my best to share more light to what I picked during the webinar session as well. During the webinar session, we talked around. So we had experts from Ofqual. And Ofqual is the regulator of qualifications, exams, and assessment in England. And it was good to have two experts from Ofqual share more light on the GCSE and A-level structure, which most parents like myself often find very, very, very challenging. I mean, I've got my son who's going to be writing the exams in a couple of years, I think a year or so. And the initial start when it needed to select, the subjects for his GCSE. I remember vividly, myself and my husband going to the school to meet with respective teachers. And after the whole session, we were more confused as regards to what subject should we choose, because it seems to have, good level. It's kind of very good in almost all the subjects. So we had to pick certain subjects that he is exceptional in. And the boy himself was like, I'm good at everything, but you can't do everything. We need to pick. And that was the whole battle back and forth until, I attended the webinar session and I had the opportunity to ask questions myself and to get answers to some of those challenges. So we look critically at the challenges associated with understanding the new GCSE and A-level grading and structure and the uncertainty around the numerical grading system. So the grading system has changed. In those days, for someone, like myself, that's, is understand the grading system in Nigeria is completely different from what we've got here. So the ABC is the ABC grading, the Hay asterisk grading is completely off now. Now we are into the 9, the 8 kind of grading, which some of us will really need to, as parents, for us to be able to support our children to excel in this exam, we actually need to start to understand those nitty-gritties, those grading system ourselves. So it was good to understand what those grading system mean really, and how we can, support children to be to haste that exam in a very good way. So that's one of the key learning point for me, aside the fact that the off-call and the experts from off-call also gave good they gave recommendations and solutions to some of the challenges that parents had. So we had a lot of questions coming from parents, questions like what should parents expect from the examination structure, questions like what are the range of qualifications and options available to children after the GCSE and the A-level exam, because it's one thing for you to write the exam, then you finish the exam, then what next? And that's the question most parents would also ask as well. So we had, information around that. We had information around the pathway for students to receive an exam. So if you really didn't go the way you expected in some key subjects like maths and English, which I think is mandatory, what are the core steps that you need to take as a parent to be able to, support your children? I mean, I could go on and on. Lastly, we also talked around resilience and how to, build, support children and students, especially when it comes to, the exam pressure and stress that comes with it. And it not only, comes on children alone. I mean, parents also go through that level of stress. I think we go through the stress more than the children themselves. And so it was good to to really, really learn from the experts as regards to some of the tips. Key tips for me that I took from the session is when it comes to support system for children, it's important that you prepare ahead of time and you get into the exam mood yourself as a parent to be able to support your children. So you understand, the several subjects. You probably don't need to know the all details. I mean, I won't know French for any bit. I can't even understand it, but at least, you can walk step by step with your child as, during the revision process, and, support your child, encourage your child. You can just be that body, provide that body system to your child all through that exam period, and just be present in a way during that whole exam, before, during, and after the exam. So that's one key takeaway for me, aside the technical aspect of the GCSE A-level structure. And to add to, the video recording is online on our YouTube channel. And we also got answers to some of the questions written by parents, sent in by parents. We had off-call provide an appropriate, is it appropriate, or the best answers to some of those questions. And we have that on our resource page as well. So parents can have access to some of those questions that, those lingering questions that you may have, and you see, the expert response to some of those questions. I hope I've been able to, explain in details the key points for me from that session. Yeah, over to you, Dr. Petty.
I mean, thank you very much, Bumi. One of the things you mentioned that I really like is the fact that even it's not just about the exams, but it's about building resilience as well in the children. And I think as parents, we have to remember that exams is a whole, in fact, I think exams are a way of teaching life skills to children beyond the academics, because like it or not, we will always stumble at some point. And children need to be prepared for life, which means that they have to know that there's morning, but there's night. There's a falling and there's a standing up, and it's part of our role as parents. Yes, we want them to be the best all the time, but come on, we have to be realistic. It's hardly possible. Even for us as parents, we're hardly ever 100% all the time. But I think it's at those moments when they're at their lowest that we step in. We become that shoulder, we become that friend. Bumi used the word, we become that buddy for them. So I think that's really important. So yes, indeed, it will be for me. My kids aren't there yet, but of course, I've got friends with children who are at that stage. So I'm more than interested in looking up those resources as well and sharing with them. And another thing I'd like to mention is we've got the Parents web app, which will be launching really soon. And it's going to have a page dedicated to this exact subject because we know how important it is. And when we launch and we invite all of you, including those who already have children that have gone past that stage, we want you to be there. So basically pay it forward, support other parents who are just coming along. And then for those of us who are not there yet, we will be there watching and listening and learning how best to support our kids when it gets to that time. So thanks a lot for sharing, Bumi. And
Thank you.
I could see Chioma nodding and Lily and Ade and Sonia. So clearly this is something that resonates with everyone. So yeah, thanks for that.
Can I just say it would be nice to hear probably one word from Chioma. I know you've gone past that stage.
Well, I mentioned her name. I thought she would take the bait, but she didn't. So thanks for that, Bumi.
We mentioned a few other people's names, so I thought, should I really add? I mean, I think just, hearing Bumi reiterate all the important points, they're all really important. My eldest is actually off to university in like the next week or so. So we've sort of gone through, so I understand, the different grading, the nines, the eights, and all the different stages. But I think something I wanted to add is that even in terms of post A levels, that there are other options that children could go into, that there are even things like degree apprenticeships that some of the big companies will pay for children to go and study for 3 or 4 years and gain qualifications. But I think I really liked all that you ladies said about resilience, and I liked, what you said about exam actually teaching children about life. I thought that was really important. But I think just really walking through that journey, because children today really need a lot of help and support through things like exams, because I think the pandemic is definitely, in some ways, I feel like has messed with children's mental well-being. So I think things like being a buddy really helps them to know that you're there with them in the good times and the bad times. And if they don't make the grades, it doesn't mean that you love them any less. It just means that we look at plan B. And that's what I said even for A levels, when my son didn't quite get the points, because he actually did something else called IB. So not everybody does A levels. My son did the International Baccalaureate. And so it meant that actually he got his results back in July, a month before everybody else did. And it was helpful for him because then he could approach universities and say, look, I've got my results. Can I take that place? Especially for his second choice. So it's really helpful for people to know, children and parents, that it's not the end of the world if they don't quite meet those points. Because my son was 2 points short of his predicted grades, or what he needed to get to his university. But the firm choice, and that's the other thing with A levels when they're going to universities, that they have firm and insurance choice. So he got his insurance choice, which is the University of Kent, and it begins next week. So it's just important for parents to know that as well. So yeah, thank you.
Congratulations, by the way.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies and
And
gentlemen.
well done. Just listening, I remember there was a running joke when I feel a bit old now. I was going to say when I was younger. Well, in secondary school, we used to say, oh, all the parents always came first. We wouldn't even believe them because we thought we were making up the stories, and they said, oh, I was really brilliant in school. What I think it was because they were saying it as a way of shaming you into doing well. So it was almost like, what's your excuse? I had less resources than you, and I always came up tops, right?
Yeah.
I see Adi smiling.
Yes, age-old story with our parents, right? They always got all A's all the time, every time. And, you grow older, you get a bit of hindsight, you think that couldn't have been the case. But actually, it's just to pick up one of the points that Chioma made about alternative options. So my daughter chose not to go to university, but she decided literally the last day of applying for university that she didn't want to go, but she had done a lot of research prior. So she's working for a large management consultancy firm. So the thing about part of the journey, not so much with GCSEs, but more with A levels as you're coming up to the exams, it's probably towards the end of the first year a good time to start looking at the alternatives, especially around apprenticeships. The reason I say that to some extent now is because obviously the cost of going to university, the cost of living, is making some students think about alternatives. And I know amongst a lot of friends I have that because their children didn't consider an apprenticeship option, they're now having to take a year off because they have the same sort of cut-offs and application deadlines around the January, February. So you need to kind of identify early that's something you might want to do. You can't get to your A levels and think, okay, maybe I want to do an apprenticeship, and then expect to kind of just walk into one. It takes just as much work, actually. Is the point there?
Oh, thank you so much. And I think that's a very important point because it's this thing about not being single-minded, isn't it? Being aware of all the options,
yeah,
and then exploring a plan A, but a plan B, because sometimes the plan B is more important than the plan A. And it's not so much that the plan B is any less, but it's just saying that these are the alternative routes. And I think it also speaks to this idea of sitting down with the children and just doing a plan, because children very often, they just think about the next holiday, isn't it? So part of the job as a parent is that long-term planning, the long-term thinking, and with hindsight and all the experiences we've had, knowing that actually there are different options and each of them have their pros, their cons, which you can explore with the children. Because I think it's also important that we don't do it in such a way that they feel like they've lost out on something and then they're just compromising. No, it should be that they know the options, they know what the pros and cons are, and they can make an informed decision, of course, supported by their parents. So very, very good point you've raised, Mr. Addy. Thanks for that. And perhaps that's something we could even explore further, in another session where we go beyond the GCSE A levels to actually say, how do we prepare children beyond fixing exams, like focusing only on the exams, to saying, actually, what are these exams leading to? And if it is about employability, for instance, how do we build those employability skills? Because it's really a lot more than exams and schools. There's so many other things children can engage in. And having said that, I think at this point I should mention the Africanness Summer of Kindness, which we're just say myself. And the reason I say this is because it was a month long of activities for children. Every day there was something. And I think each of those activities were teaching children one skill or the other. And sometimes just exposing them to some parts of the environment that may not have paid attention to. I remember speaking to one parent who was taking their child to a food bank, for instance. And I know there are some adults who hardly know what the food bank is or where it is. It's not an indictment, it's just saying that there are ways or these are opportunities for learning about what exists out there. And sometimes through these ad hoc extracurricular activities, children can actually become exposed to options that they may not meet in the formal classroom environment. So thanks for that. I think we'll now go on to the next discussion or part of the discussion, which is about cultural inclusiveness in children and young people, the complexities, but also the benefits. Now, we had a webinar on this, and the webinar was aimed to explore, or the webinar aimed to explore the importance of cultural inclusiveness in children and young people generally. It focused on how culture, cultural beliefs, and cultural dissonance shapes our identity, and also the impact this has on children's behaviors both at home and in school. The importance of this topic cannot be overemphasized. It reflects the importance of acknowledging but also respecting cultural diversity in education and understanding how this can impact on the social and emotional development of children and young people. It also provides insights on how educators can create an inclusive learning environment that supports the diverse needs of our students or of their students and our children. And this was a very well attended webinar, which also involved all the trustees, I should say, of Afrikindness, who are experts in different fields. So amongst the trustees, we have those who are governors in schools, who are educators and have been for decades, I should say. So to give a bit of context, Mr. Ade, parents' culture can influence their children's development. We know that. A 2019 study, for example, found that cultural values very often influence the way parents raise their children, including how they discipline and set boundaries. Now, it makes sense that parents would want to raise their children based on cultural influences because they're preparing them to develop behaviors that are necessary to operate or thrive in that culture. But essentially, they're preparing them to be accepted into that culture. However, when the social environment and the home culture clashes, we also know that developmental issues could arise. Based on this, I'd like to ask you, what was your key takeaway from the panel discussion on cultural inclusiveness in children and young people in the UK? And what would you say are the current trends, and how can parents support their children's cultural identity while at the same time promoting positive behavior?
Big question. I think, as you mentioned, it is a very complex area. Full stop. Just in terms of being in the UK specifically, around your political situation, you've got social situation, education. Really, it is very complex. I think my big takeaway from the panel discussion was that the awareness and or perception, if you like, of culture and cultural issues from a child's perspective obviously changes quite dramatically as they grow older. So they start off in school, they're playing with other kids. Maybe there isn't much in the way of an understanding of the different cultures that they have been brought up into and that they will grow into. But that changes quite quickly once they start learning to talk, speak, and get a better understanding of the world. I think from a parents' perspective, we need to be mindful of that. Especially around the fact that obviously children behave and they adapt and they respond in various different ways, in lots of different ways, actually. You could have two children in the same family who going through the same, changes in terms of school and growing up and so forth, and react entirely differently. There's no rhyme or reason. We're all individuals. So I'm thinking that, again, part of the big takeaway was kind of being very, very mindful of the fact that it changes in children, being mindful of the environments they're in, and actually spending a lot more time listening, looking, observing, and being a sounding board for children to focus on. I'm mindful of the fact that obviously when we were all growing up, you kind of, your parents, your uncles and these are all your seniors. These aren't people you would go to for a confidence talk. That just didn't happen. I think these days we need to be much more friendly. I know we might not necessarily like the terminology about, they're our children, they're not our friends, but we have to treat them kind of both, the friendly parent, and it's a hard balance actually. People find, I think, as their child gets older and they get more independent and they get more rebellious, if you've brought them up in too friendly a manner, then the boundary between them being the child and you being the parent, it diminishes, and it does make it hard to not that you want to control them, but it makes it hard to give them a steer. So again, I think big takeaway is just really about making sure we're observing the changes and the understanding, the pain, the emotions they're going through, and from that, it is important because the change or the learning they're going through can have really quite big emotional impacts. It could affect their confidence if they're always concerned or worried or not sure of who they are, what they are in certain environments, and those sort of things can have long-lasting changes, which worst case scenario leads to development issues, kind of social and wellness and mental health issues. So again, definitely a requirement to provide the support around that. And again, kind of further impacts, when they get out into the workplace, school, university, and work. So we need to be on top of that. I think just generally the takeaway is let's be mindful of the fact that our children are growing up not into a more complex world, not just from a cultural perspective, but economically, politically. There is so much diversion in terms of media, good, bad, difficult to control. Children spend a lot of time by themselves on their devices when we're not there. I know this is part of the online safety issue that we can talk about later, but somehow we have to find a way to keep an open door. They, always need to be able to come to us. In terms of the second part of your question around trends, I think that's very difficult. I think there are many micro trends. I don't think there's any general trends about where society is going in terms of managing cultural awareness. I do tend to see things quite binary when it comes to trends. They're either good or bad. So, bad trends are about, the fact there's just so much information, social media, so much misleading information. A lot of people are getting, when I people, teachers, educationalists, people who are professionals are picking up a lot of information about cultures and cultural awareness from social media, from unvalidated sources, and they use that as a source of truth, which can be quite damaging. With the most negative trend, I think in terms of positive trends, schools, university, workplaces, they're putting a lot more effort into policies around cultural awareness and cultural days. So there is some good there, and somehow we have to find the balance. I think fundamentally it comes down to each parent first, and then as a community of parents, trying to find the right kind of balance and guidance for our children. And then the last point you mentioned was around what can we do to support our children. I think the parents' view, and increasingly I've thought this over the last 3 years, we have to take a very much a multicultural view from day one. We're precious about children. We like to bring them up in our cultures. That's all fine and dandy. I think when we're doing that in an environment which is not our primary culture, we probably have to be a bit more relaxed to some extent. Now, when we say that, there's obviously parts of the adopted culture that we're just not going to like. That's part of the course. I think, therefore, the challenge we have is a balance of limiting children's or younger people's exposure to their culture versus giving them the knowledge and empowering them to be able to understand what their boundaries are, cultural and personal, and to be able to maintain those boundaries, but also to respect the boundaries of other cultures and the beliefs of other cultures, because truly I think that's the only way you can really get to a point where we as parents are a bit more comfortable knowing that our children are growing up in a world, they understand the different cultures, they understand where the boundaries are, understand the differences, and primarily understand, kind of what is good, what is bad. You're quite binary, but collectively, they have to come to an understanding themselves so they can manage and understand. It's difficult to, kind of force it on them.
Thank you so much for that, Adi. I think you've said so much which resonates with me as well. And this time around, I'm going to ask Lily and Abias, because I could see them nodding away like, yes, yes. But before I do that, I think from my perspective, one of the things that really struck me while you were speaking, Adi, was this fact that even culture changes. So there's no fixed culture. And one of the things that I have noticed, I may be wrong, but I have noticed this for sure, is sometimes it seems like parents want to hold on to certain cultures almost as a way of reminding themselves that, oh, this is who I am. But in a way that I think could be detrimental to the children. Because these are just innocent children. They're not questioning who you are or what you are. But I think as parents, we just have to be a bit more sensitive to the ways in which we impose our, I don't want to say identity crisis, but in the ways in which we impose our questioning over our own self, culture, beliefs, the changes we're experiencing on the children. Because really, sometimes I ask myself, what's my culture? And it's not an easy question. It's not an easy answer. Because it's not everything that comes with my identity in quotes that I accept, because otherwise that's stereotyping, isn't it? So there are certain parts of the culture that I identify with. There are others that I see in other cultures that I also identify with. And essentially, what is culture? It's a way of life. And if we look at our ways of lives, we'll see that it's really a mix. It's a mix of where we come from, what we've learned, what we've picked up from TV, from interactions with other people. It's really a big mix. So I think it's unfair to then try to impose something that we have created for ourselves on our children like it is dogma, because it is not. Again, the experiences those children are going to would be very different from the experiences we are going to, even though we live in the same houses. They go to schools that we don't go to, we don't say. So I think the point Ade has made about really teaching them boundaries, teaching them to be able to recognize what is, in quotes, right and wrong. Essentially, that's the most we can do. That way, wherever they may go, because I think some things are just universal, irrespective of what culture you come from. Respect is respect.
Absolutely.
Kindness is kindness. Being considerate is being considerate. And sometimes when I think about greeting, for instance, I know that in some cultures, people want to greet you by kissing you on the cheeks. In other cultures, it's a no-no. But if you respect the culture, it's not really about knowing the details, but that respect allows you understand that actually I'm in a new place, so I need to learn what's acceptable here. I just want to be friendly. So whatever is acceptable here, so those boundaries, I think those fundamental values, those principles are really the things that are most important. So that whatever culture the children find themselves in, they're more able to adapt, but adapt in a way that doesn't compromise their values, doesn't compromise the principles. And so as parents, we perhaps need to focus a bit more on the values, the principles, as against this is what you should do, this is not what you should do. Yeah. But what do you think, Abias, and then Lily? Any thoughts on this at all?
My perspective might be a little bit different from what you shared, but I believe what Mr. Ade said and yourself resonates with me. So my take on culture is I bring it down to my values. And the values that you said is universal, because I believe that the way you see things or the way you accept things depends on your map of the world, the lens at which you're looking at things. But like you said, kindness is universal, right? So when I say I base my culture around values, which is honesty, respect, integrity, right? Around those things, I base is not negotiable. Because it doesn't matter the way you demonstrate your cultural background, but when you have those things as your core, then you find out that you will treat everybody with respect. You will treat everybody fairly. Because I'm one that believes in fairness, equity, and justice, right? Irrespective of where you're from.
Yeah.
So, because I actually believe that those cultural things, when you deep down, some of them do rob us. And some people are not willing to let them go because the hold that they have on you, you are taking it away from them. So if I should give an example of this that I say robbers, my dad died in 2021 and we went over for the funeral. You need to see some cultural stunts elders were pulling. These are some of the elders I don't even know. And I'm very, very sure that my dad did not see them often. Right? But now that it's late, they want to sit on that cultural biases to rob us. And I didn't stand for that. But what do you have to do? You have to be respectful and just let certain things slide. And when you say you don't want to perform some cultural rites, they go like, you have to pay money. So the question is, are you trying to exploit me? Or you really want to do that cultural stuff? You see what I mean? So if it's really, really that strong, why then are you asking for money alternative? So some cultural things exploit us. And this is why some elders, they will hold on to it because they don't want to let it go. Because that's the way they make their ends meet. Those are the things that I really don't like. So, but when it comes to building it up upon the core values, you realize that irrespective of your religion, you have to be honest. Irrespective of your religion, you are supposed to be kind. Irrespective of your religion, you're supposed to be a man or woman of your word. So that is what I do. That's what I show my children based on. And I think that's the only way that is fair to me, because I don't want any culture that exploited me to exploit my children. I'll yield my mic.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I mean, I can't agree any less. Lily?
I think I really what Ade said really resonates my experience, what I believed in maybe the time that I've been here. For those that have listened to the podcast, know that I am not. I've been in the UK only for 1 year, so I am from Malaysia, where I am so used to, we don't really have that diversity as what we are experiencing now. And when my child go to school, he experience a lot of cultures, a lot of people, new people that he sees. And I really believe in what Adi said. You know, when you want to try to parent your child, you at one instance you want to be, you know, really strict, you know, make sure that he does this, does that. But at the same time, you also want them to talk to you so that if they have any problems, they will come to you and not, you know, keep things inside that will lead to, you know, all those depression or anxiety and all of that. So I really experience and deal with that. And it is a daily struggle to be the, you know, the parents who listens, and also at the same time being the Asian parent that I be really strict to my son, especially because he just turned 12. He's in high school. So he is dealing with a lot of things. And I try my best, you know, to let him understand people, and try and also try to put in values as what we have discussed, you know, being kind, you know, being respectful is very important. You know, sometimes we don't understand why people do certain things, but, you know, be respectful. That's how they do that, you know. So and it is something that, you know, if we respect other people, people will also respect you. So yeah, I really believe in what Ade and Sonia has said. So yeah, that's my take on it.
You not believe in what I've said, Lily?
Of course. And of course what Paddy has said.
Can I just add? Brilliant conversation, discussion around cultural inclusiveness in children and young people. And thanks for those insights. Really, one of the key areas that I, as a parent, and I know this probably would speak for a lot of parents as well, struggle with, is that balance, especially for children. So, my own lived experience as growing up was in Nigeria. Everything about me, there is 90% of that Nigerian growing up in me. And naturally, as a mom, you want to pass that across. My goodness, that is what you know. But migrating, moving down to the UK, probably changed a little bit. You know, when you're in Nigeria, there are ways in which you do things that is peculiar to that environment. Now, I've found myself in a different environment, and I see that it's kind of very different. So you don't, you know, the way we speak, you know, my son would say, Mom, why are you always shouting? And I've said it several times to him. I am actually not shouting. That is the way I talk. You know, that is the way we talk. If I take you now and drop you in Nigeria, you will see me in a different light. I'm even trying to, you know, you know, show myself.
Put it down.
Put it down. But that aspect, they don't get it. My son struggled with it a lot. He questions everything. And as time went on, it became something that he gets angry about. You know, I call him, And it's just normal quarrel. It's not as if the pitch is not still high. But when I talk, you then hear, why are you shouting, Mom? I'm like, you have not shouted. Oh." And then, it started affecting the way it does, it views things. And that for me as a parent, I've had to take a step back to really reflect and ask myself, okay, if the way we do things there, this is a different environment for these kids, and they're not used to you just talking, shouting the way you have a visitor, and the first 5 minutes you show your style, you shout, you scream, and you go in Nigerian way, and then your kids are like, what happened? Is there anything wrong? And you're like, sorry, my dear, let me explain. And that aspect of you as a parent, listening to your child and not just enforcing your own way of doing things on them, and helping them to understand things and see things in different perspective. That's actually where parents need to come in and put a balance in. I give another instance. I learned of, and this happens to a lot of children. Children go to school. In our culture, when you have an adult in front of you and an adult is speaking to you, you are not expected to look directly. I mean, you will get a very good a very good smack or a talk through on that. Respectfully, you look down a little bit. That's a show of respect in probably African culture. But yeah, in school, they expect, children to, that's a sign of, less confidence. For you to be confident, you need to look straight up. And that's the cultural clashes there that you will really need to understand that this is a totally different environment, and we really need to support our children to see those two lights and help them in viewing life as it were, and seeing those so that it doesn't really affect their behavior, especially when it comes to them being in school. I hope that makes sense, really. Yeah.
No, it does. It does. And I think just listening to you, I would want to add that another thing perhaps is for parents to be also more flexible and amenable to change and to learn from the children. Because I'm also new to these environments, and especially with kids. And there are lots of things that my daughter comes home with. And I'm asking, oh, I have to learn to do this. Because in a sense, or in a way, the child also wants to be sure that the parents are integrating, right? So there are certain things the children want to do with you or with us. There are certain activities they want to engage in. And I think as parents, we need to be open to those activities. A very simple example, your child comes and says, can we go to the park? Even if you don't understand what you're going to do in the park, or you don't know why you should be wasting your time in the park, I think it's really important from the child's perspective, because the children are growing up in an environment where going to the park is normal.
Yes.
It's an activity for the family,
Yes.
So you need to engage in that process. Or for instance, the child has an activity in school and they've said, oh, parents need to come along for breakfast with and then you say, oh, but we had breakfast at home. Why do I have to? No. As parents, we need to be open, we need to be welcoming, and we need to also learn the cultures that we're in. And remember that we're not going to know everything from our spaces at work or schools or whatever, but the children in their own spaces are also learning about the culture.
Yes.
And it provides us an opportunity for us to learn even more and be more inclusive. Sonia has a hand up.
Yes, I do. I think we are stepping into a bit of a gray area here. Why did I say this? I believe in integrating into the culture, like you said. But I think I will go back to what Mr. Hadi said. We have to do that with boundaries. It's very, very important we do that with boundaries, because our children are watching us. When we start becoming what we are not, or changing so much, we may be sending the wrong things. So it's all about finding the boundaries. I'm saying this because when you say your children are doing this, I believe in learning from it, from people, irrespective of your age. I'm saying this in terms of key things. So, for example, the sleepover. I know the culture here, some people do sleepover. But where I come from, I don't believe in sleepover. If I allow you to go on a sleepover, there have to be certain boundaries there. Your children will come home and say, such and such a body is doing a sleepover. Can I go? I have to be able to go back and check the values of that parent. Is this the parent that I know? Do I know this family? Do I know? For example, I'm very careful with things like that. So, in as much as I want to be malleable to fit into the culture, I also have to be very, very careful. I don't want my children to be follow, people pleaser. I want them to be able to stand on their 2 feet. I know a lot of people from Africa, you don't want your children to have opinion. You see, that is where it's different. I want my children to hear their opinion, but it has to be respectfully. When I hear them say, my friend did this, so I have to do this, I'm very, very careful, because then I have to think about it. Why do you want to do this? So you want to do a sleepover, or you want me to take you to the park, or you want me to do this? If it's for you, you have a good reason. Then we'll look into that and we'll come to a mutual agreement. But when it comes to, I don't take on everything in the culture. I don't. I take on the one that suits my family at the season that we are at. So I would say, know the season you are at, know your values, know what is in alignment with it before you embrace the culture with respect. Because not everything in this culture is actually for me. I just thought I would add that. Thank you.
So I think that's excellent. Thank you. And indeed, it's with every culture because we already sort of agreed, irrespective of where you find yourself, not everything will resonate with you. And again, the other thing we have to remember is sometimes they say one person's meat is another person's poison. And it could be right amongst us here, one person might see a sleepover as the best thing ever because it allows them the breather. They just want the break. Absolutely. Why not? Somebody else may say it's a no-no for me for whatever reason. Why not? And I think that comes back to this issue of cultural inclusiveness in the sense that it might not be for me, but that doesn't mean it's not for the next person. And it's absolutely fine wherever we find ourselves, whatever we decide to do, but making that informed decision, being deliberate is important. And then if we come back to the issue of values, which we already talked about, if it aligns with your values, then sure, why not? And I think sometimes it's really the context because Abias, come on, if it was your sister's house, would the sleepover be okay? I'm sure the answer would be yes.
Yeah, that's why I said you have to have
Yeah,
it.
so
I try not
the
to impose on
context.
them. And I don't
Yeah.
say, oh, mommy, why? I say, because I said so. No, I don't do that.
Yeah.
I have to explain that, okay, this person and this person, they are different in terms of our values. They may allow you watch some horror movie or whatever, or don't, supervise the films that you watch while they are while they are in bed. And maybe, I don't know, I'll just explain. I have to explain because I don't want them to. I want them to be able to learn that there is always a reason for doing things. You don't just do it because other people are doing it. And because mommy said no and just said, oh, because I said so, I try not to do that. I always take my time to explain, if anything. I like to explain things to them so that they will learn from it. And if they want to make their own decisions in another situation, they will have a reason as well to make that decision. Of course, if it's my sister, I will let them. If it's someone that I know very well and I know that we go to one another's house, I will let them. But I have to be really careful. There's always a clause to it as to the reason. I don't embrace everything in the culture.
No, absolutely fine. And I think it also leads to the point of safety as well. So as parents, we always have to be mindful of what's a safe environment for the children. At any time, we always have that responsibility. So even when children want to go somewhere, it is our responsibility to do almost a risk assessment, not almost, to do a risk assessment, to say, okay, if this child is going here, even if I'm going with the child, what are the risks? What are the benefits? And at the end of the day, I want to believe that our assessment of the benefits should outweigh whatever risks there are for us to go ahead. Or if we think the risks are still there, we have to find ways of mitigating those risks. Because to be fair, a lot of things we do would always come with risk. But it's about understanding what those are and understanding how to keep safe in whatever environments we find ourselves. Okay, so I think that's one webinar that people would be really keen to go look at. I mean, I enjoyed going through it, and it's something I always go back to. But there are lots of issues, and I remember there were so many diverse perspectives from the different trustees. And if nothing else, it's an opportunity for you to get to hear all the trustees speak. So why not? Yeah. So I think moving on to the next team, we had a podcast on Beyond the Narrative, embracing African identity by challenging stereotypes and fostering growth. Now, that was the fourth episode of the Africanness podcast, which, by the way, if you haven't seen all the episodes, you should do, because there are lots of interesting conversations in those sessions. And we've got very good reviews so far. So I would encourage all of us to please engage with the content. Now, the guests in that session delved into how stereotypes can shape perceptions and influence how individuals view themselves and others. The focus of the discussion was on highlighting some of the key stereotypes about Africa and its diverse cultures, as well as challenging the stereotypes and exploring the implications on growth and development at the individual but also collective levels. Of course, the adverse impacts of stereotypes and the importance of a strong sense of positive self identity for the personal development of children, but also parents, cannot be overemphasized. And these are issues that cut across all social strata, ethnicity, gender, and other personal attributes. So even though it was something to do with African identity, we had guests who were not necessarily Africans in the room, because this is a topic that cuts across different parts of the world, really. So, Lily, I know this is a subject that you feel really strongly about, and you've also touched on some of it in the previous conversation around cultural inclusiveness. But I'd like to ask you, how do you think parents can really support children, especially in situations where they have experienced some form of stereotyping or other upsetting experiences, whether in schools or in other public places?
All right. Thank you, Paddy. Yes, it is something that I really, really feel strongly about, because I personally experienced this myself with my son. As I explained earlier, I'm very new here. This is our first year here. So, and we have never experienced other than Malaysia, like what Bumi said. I only know Malaysia my whole life. My children know Malaysia their whole life. We've been to vacations, but that's only like 1 or 2 weeks, right? So one thing that I didn't really weigh on when I came here was how my children can integrate themselves. How would they be, here? How would their lives be here? Because especially my son, he is a very talkative, friendly person. So I said he'll be okay. He'll do just fine. He'll make lots of friends. But he actually had challenges at school. And it makes me as a parent, it changed me as a parent, to be honest, because when things happen to your child, you would stop and think like, why is this happening? He's a great person. Why would these awful things happening to him? And I learned a lot of things. So he had challenges in terms of different beliefs, different cultures, and he doesn't understand certain things that's happening to him. So what I, as a parent, think through my own experience is that we always have to be the first person that the child comes to for anything. So as an Asian parent, yes, sometimes I would say, no, you want to go to the shop, in front of the street? No. You want to go to your friend's house? No. A lot of no's when you're Asian parents. But when your child goes through these things, you try to be their friend. You try to make them understand. You try to make them talk to you. And through the whole experience, it is a learning curve for both of us. My child knows that I am his safe space. I don't judge him. I try my best not to. So he knows that whatever that he is, what's happening to him, he will come to me. Another thing that I learned is that you always have to fight for your child. So I noticed this firsthand because when things are happening to him, I went to the school and asked the teachers what's happening. And I don't go there, getting angry or scolding the teachers. It's just, discussing what's happening, what can they do to support my child. And at the end of the day, my son really, really appreciate that because he really said like, Ma, thank you for believing in me and thank you for fighting for me. And because of that, also things really change at school and he's doing much better now. And yeah, I think that the two core things that as a parent and what I believe is you always have to listen to them, make them feel safe, know that we don't judge them, and we fight for them, meaning that they come to us and we don't just say, it's okay, it happens all the time, you just get over it. You don't do that, because I think when we really fight for them in a way, it builds their confidence. He knows that he has someone to trust, and he doesn't feel that he's all alone because you have to really understand my son is like he knows only Malaysia. He comes here and everything is new. He has to go to a school that he doesn't know with a lot of people that sometimes he doesn't understand. So it was a really hard time for him. And I am so thankful that I really got a really good support system, especially my friends here. I asked a lot of people. I asked my friends who have gone through all of this and asked them what is the best way to deal with this. And that's why what Ade, Sonia, Bumi and Shioma has said, and also Paddy, said throughout, really, I really can relate to it. And I believe in everything that all of you have said. So yeah, that's my take on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lily. And I think it's really important. I mean, just listening to you to also recognize that even as parents, that support system Lily has mentioned is really important.
Yes.
Because a lot of the times, especially when children are going through difficulties, parents seem to feel it twice as much, or at
Yes.
least it feels that way. So when you're in the middle of all of that, you probably also need your support system. That
Yeah.
is not the children, so that the children aren't necessarily seeing you breaking down in that moment or seeing you lose it. But you can fall back on that support system, whatever it might be, whether it's friends, as Lily has mentioned, whether it's family, whatever. But just have that system. And one of the things, being where I come from, I know we can be very secretive.
Yeah.
I am not sure how much good that does, especially when you're in difficult situations or complex situations. You know how they say sometimes a problem shared is a problem half solved? And especially when you say to the right persons, of course, I'm not saying go to social media and tell the world this is what's going on with you. No. But if you have trusted counsel, people that have their heads screwed on right, people that have your best interest at heart. And sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you may misjudge people. And I think that's absolutely fine. But next time not to go to those same people. But you keep trying until you have this trusted few that in times like this you can go to. Perhaps they've walked that road before you. And so you can go to them to say, look, this is what's going, or this is what I'm going through. What do you suggest? And you would be surprised at the kinds of ideas they might come up with, which you may have come up with yourself, but just because you're in that situation, you're not able to breathe, you're not able to think through it without the support. So as parents, we shouldn't minimize the importance of having a support network for ourselves and keeping that support network going. And of course, also being there for other parents.
Exactly.
Because sometimes it's about paying it forward, isn't it? So as we want to enjoy that support, we also think about ways in which we provide the same for others around us. And I should say thank you to all of you who are here today, because that's exactly what you're doing. So we really appreciate this. Thank you. Now, I think this leads
Sorry,
us really
Sorry,
nicely.
Freddie,
Yeah.
before you move on, when Rosali was talking, it goes both ways in terms of the way people experience the changes in terms of immigration. So I have an example of people come of a new child in school that came in that thought the things he was, I don't know, maybe the way it was, I'm not quite sure how to phrase this, but the way he was behaving in school, it felt like the girls were underneath the boys. And he was doing this for the duration he was in school. And my daughter keeps saying, this person said this, and this person said this person did that. He imposed himself on girls. And when you complain, it's like the way he speaks to them is like you are beneath me, and that is where I am. And that's because he was new. He didn't understand the differences. So I'm just trying to say, when you experience it when you come in, sometimes it's the other way around. It flips as well. You imposing yourself on other people. Perhaps he was trying to make friends, but he was doing it the other way around. And it got to a point where he actually used the N word. I don't want to say it, but I'm sure we all know what the N word is. And that was the point. So, Rosali, when you said the support system is very important, I just want to reiterate that it's so key. That was the point. This has taken about 2 terms then. That was the point I had to step in. But I didn't go to school in my own case because my daughter is 15. I just sent an email to the head teacher to please look into that and address it. And it just took the email, they spoke to the pastoral team, spoke to the boy, and explained certain things to him on how to make friends. You don't have to impose yourself on them. You don't have to call their names. You don't have to get in their spaces. You just have to look at people that welcome you, and then you be their friends. You don't need to do that. And there were changes in the last term. So I'm just trying to say sometimes it goes both ways. When you are new, is either they are picking on you or maybe you find people to pick on. So I just thought I will add a contribution to it.
No, thank you. And I think that's a very good point, an important one, I should say, you've raised, because one of the things we also try to emphasize in the parent community is that even the children who display disturbing behavior, challenging behaviors, they're children as well. And they're our children. So we also have to remind ourselves constantly that it is our duty as parents to be sure that the children in our care are guided to be those model children we want them to be. And where the children fall short, we also guide them accordingly. We don't judge them, but we support them. And I think that leads us nicely, really, to inclusive learning, which was, again, one of the themes we covered in the sessions. Now, that session was really about understanding the ways in which inclusive education is a priority for ensuring progression and successful learning outcomes for children, especially children from minority backgrounds or children who have special learning needs. We had a webinar session on this, and it was organized in partnership with the Parents Teachers Association in Nigeria in order to ensure that the members of that association were provided with the skills, but also with the platform for engaging in this conversation around what exactly inclusive education means. And I think it was a very well attended one. We had over 500 teachers in attendance. I remember, yeah, it was big. And it led to yet another session, which then got the parents in as well. So it started out with just Afrikaners and the teachers, but then there was a big need, and then we brought in the parents in a subsequent event. So Choma, just to give a bit of context, it's often said that it takes a village, right? This issue of raising children, it's no single person business. It takes a whole community, and rightly so. Now, parents and teachers need to work closely together in order to create a conducive environment for children to learn, aspire, and excel. The webinar on parent-teacher partnership for inclusive learning highlighted some key lessons in the meaning, but also the importance of inclusive learning, as well as strategies for supporting children who have diverse learning capabilities and needs. It is often a challenge for parents to accept that their children actually require special interventions in most cases. And it also takes trust open communication and collaboration for parents and teachers to work together to meet the needs of children effectively, whatever those may be. Now, we've heard Lily talk about going into school to support her child. We've heard Sonia also talk about reaching out to school to support her child. And I think each of us, Bumi, Ade, we've all had experiences where we've had to contact school somehow. So essentially, we recognize the importance of that partnership. So the question, Shoma, is how can parents and teachers effectively work together, but also build the necessary connections in order to create an inclusive learning environment for children, especially children who might require some special interventions?
Thank you. Thank you for the discussion so far. I think, as you said, it leads rightly into what we're now talking about. And I think one of the key ways is definitely that parent-teacher partnership, that everyone works together for the good of the children, for parents to work alongside the teachers. And I think, it's similar to something you said at the beginning, Petty, like parents showing their faces, attending PTA meetings, getting involved. I know that's something that I've done in my son's school, and that's really been helpful to build that connection. And then that way, the teachers actually say, this parent does care about their children. It might not be something that we might be used to doing, but it's really important for us to get involved in being part of the school. We could become school governors, we could volunteer reading in the primary schools in the younger years, or, I know I've done things like go and doing Black History Months. I've gone in and delivered sessions and workshops to the children, or assembly. So I think parents working alongside the teachers for the good of the children. But I think also when children do have special educational needs or they're neurodivergent, it's really important for parents to acknowledge that their children have needs, that actually those are not just to label the children, it's actually to help the children do better and excel and thrive. So for instance, if a child is dyslexic or if a child might be autistic, actually agreeing with the school to get the child tested so that the child can receive the support, say one-to-one, perhaps they might need one-to-one support with their reading or writing. If a parent says, oh no, my child is absolutely fine, but yet that child is struggling, that child doesn't get the support, and that actually can hinder the child's learning. So I think it's really important for parents to, one, admit if there is an issue, that it's not something to be ashamed about, but actually it's important to work with the school to get the needs and support the needs of the child. And then secondly, I think it's also important that when a need is identified, that everyone works together, continues to work together for the good of the child so that the child can continue to thrive and get support. And I say this because I've heard young people who said, oh, my parent is African and I had needs, and they didn't believe it. They didn't want to be labeled. They didn't want their child labeled as someone that has ADHD. And so they refused to get support. But I remember one particular young person saying, but what their teacher did, because they struggled through school, but when they were doing their GCSE, that a teacher said, you know what, you need help, and I'm going to make sure that you get the support. And I'm going to get alongside your parent and actually explain that this support is not to shame or label their child, but actually to support the child. And the child actually ended up thriving that final year. But sadly, he took the final year and he said, I struggled through school because my parent would not let me get the support that I needed because they felt it was something that was shameful. So I think that's really important. I think also for the teachers, in respect, being able to teach in different ways. So children have different learning styles. So some children, can listen a lot. Some children are kinesthetic, so they like to do and move. So if a teacher doesn't have all of those different learning styles, then they might not be able to meet the needs of that child. So it's actually being aware of, I think some of the conversation we talked about being our children's friends, so we understand their needs, we understand what subjects they want to do. We're not imposing and saying, oh, you must be a doctor or lawyer, but actually we're saying you are really good at technology. So my son, for instance, who's going up to university, he loves reading. I remember his granddad said, oh, he should be a lawyer. And I thought, I'm not going to say that to him because he's never been interested in law, but I know he's interested in technology. So we sat and we encouraged that. And that was actually what he's going to study, computer science in the next week. But it's so important that we look at our children's needs and we observe, I think, like Ade said, and a few of us have spoken about, and we work alongside them. But also finally that we advocate for them, because sometimes a child might have needs, the school might not see it. But as parents, when we advocate for our children, just like Lily spoke about, and I think and a few people have spoken about as well, then we can appropriately support the children with the needs that they might have.
I mean, thank you so much for that. And just listening to you, I think it's also about different forms of assessments, right? Lily, this is something we keep drumming and drumming and drumming because it's the same way children would learn in different ways. I think they would also be able to excel in different forms of assessments. So these are things that, parents and teachers need to work together to recognize and try to provide an enabling environment for the children to not just try, but to excel, whatever they may be doing. Thanks a lot. I mean, we do have those recordings as well available, and I'll encourage everyone to go through them because I think they were quite informative and they're still very valid. We actually had a series on neurodivergence, and that was a series that was run by Dr. Vivian, who should have been here today, but is not able to join for some reasons. But she has done this excellent series on neurodivergence in children, and it's really very informative. So I would say as much as we can to engage with the content. And of course, if we have any questions, we can send them in and we'll direct them to Dr. Vivian and other colleagues within Afrikindness and even outside of Afrikindness who would be able to provide the necessary answers and support. And I think really that conversation emphasizes the importance of parents being involved. And as we move on to the issue of online safety and nurturing digital resilience in today's children, that was one message that came through for me at least. In that session, the main question we asked was, how safe are our children online? And that's a very valid question on practically every parent's mind today. Because even when you don't ask them to go online, school would ask them to go online for one reason or the other. So you can hardly avoid it. The webinar on digital parenting and children's online safety was quite informative. In today's rapidly evolving digital landscape, ensuring the online safety of our children has become a paramount concern for parents and caregivers. Now, we had the summer holidays approaching at the time. That's over now. But nonetheless, children will continue to spend time online even as they go back to school. And so it's crucial for parents to be equipped with the necessary knowledge as well as tools to protect their children from the potential risks and challenges which the online environment presents. But we also have to be able to help them maximize the opportunities which also exist in the online environment. We had an expert panel. We had a pre-session and then we had a live session. And we had experts really from technology spaces, some of them on the boards of some of the main social media platforms that are in use today. And these experts delved deep into the digital landscape that children navigate daily. They explore the potential opportunities for their development while engaging online, but they also explore the risks and challenges which children may face, from cyberbullying to privacy concerns. They shed light on some of the dangers lurking in the virtual realm, but also emphasize the ways in which parents can actually support their children to remain safe. For me, I learned three things. One of them was the fact that we have to be involved. It's not a case of, oh, sit there while I do something else. No. The only way to know what's actually going on is being involved in that process. The second thing I learned was the importance of open communication and trust building. And you would see that that's a recurring theme that we've talked about in all the different sessions we've covered today, whether it's inclusive education, cultural inclusiveness, the GCSs, this open communication and trust building is really key. And then the third thing was the need for us to be able to set up parental controls online and the dangers of spying on children. So while we want to check what they're doing, it has to be done in a way that they don't think we're spying on them, because otherwise that would erode trust. That was something I picked up from the experts on the day. So Abias, I'll come to you with this final question. What is your perspective on the importance, but also the practical steps for ensuring that children stay safe online?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Purdy. I think you've actually hit on some of the things that I would like to talk about. Most parents, I just wanted to know that lying to them or making them fearful is not going to cut it. Because, I remember when I was growing up, my dad would use this like, if you do this, this will happen. And then you discover that no, that is not going to happen. It's just to make you fearful. So he doesn't cut it anymore because these children, they are not really scared like we were. You know, they are very curious. And it is natural for children to have high level of curiosity. So when you start hiding things from them or shielding them, saying you don't need to know this now, or because I say so and things like that, you are going to increase your level of curiosity. So the best way to do that is just to tell them the truth. Tell them the truth. What is going on there? There are pros and cons of using the digital devices. So we have to tell them because they are aware. If you tell them that, oh, it's not good, it's going to get you into trouble, they will know that you're trying to trick them. So just tell them the truth. Like that's what I normally do with my children. I tell them the danger. See, it's a good thing. There are good things that have come out of the social media and using devices like for your assignments and things like that. But I also tell them the dangers. There are people with the fact that someone is chatting with you and has a picture there. It doesn't really mean that person is your age mate. That is the danger of people hiding behind the mask of social media. And make them very aware of that. So it's a matter of educating them. And when you're educating them, you have to be really, really patient. Because for them to assimilate what you've said, you may have to repeat it more than once, more than twice. You have to repeat it over and over again. And when the need arises, don't be so upset than to lose it with them. Just tell them the truth over and over again. Remind them. So I just tell them that people may hide behind and pretend to be who they are not. And also your details as well. You have to be very, very careful. Don't put your details online for any reason apart from your assignment. Your date of birth is private. You need to ensure that you don't push such things. Your location as well. You need to turn it off if you have to use a device. You have to be really, really careful not to disclose that, or your school. And when you're taking pictures, especially with WhatsApp now, it is social media as well, isn't it? When you take picture, make sure the logo of your school is not showing. Mm-hmm. When it's showing, I showed my daughter how to blur it. You need to blur it out because then they can trace you to school, right? And you've shown your picture, so you have to be really, really careful. Don't leave your things that they might bypass or not take so serious. You have to let them know about that as well. And another thing again, when there are things in the news, is an opportunity to educate them. You know why? I believe in the power of stories. Stories are so powerful. So when things are in the media, like for example, last year in Manchester, a group of boys were sentenced to prison because of what had happened in Telegram. They were in a group. They planned to, he was a good child. He got something from the Queen, an award from the Queen and everything. But he added him to the group. He did not say a word. All he did was that he remained there. He did not delete himself. So when they planned to jump on another boy to teach him a lesson, which led to his death, the police confiscated their phone. The arrangement for the jumping started from that group. They arrested all of them, and they were all sent to prison. So you see, by association, and that was a great one. So I had to sit my children down, and the story, you have to read it, and let's extract the learning from this. So grab every opportunity to teach them real life stories, the things, consequences that could arise when you leave yourself exposed. Don't stay in a group where you have nothing in common. And also try not to make friends with people that you do not know physically or you do not really trust their behavior. People that you know that their association is not the best online, you don't have to be there. Remove yourself. There's nothing that is going to happen. And if you bring a problem, you need to leave that open communication where they come to you. You talk about it. Because some of them are bullied to join these groups, you know. So you have to talk about it. And like we said before, the support system. Then the parental control, like you said, I let them know their parental control. So they have emails. If you log into your email, I will get an alert. Then you log into your email. There must be good reasons for it. We'll talk about it. Yeah, that trust one is a big one. Trust goes both ways. I have to trust you that you listen to me when I've told you about these dangers, that you take it on board, and I will not pick up your phone when you are not there. So if you put a password on your phone, I need to know what the password is, not because I want to check on you, but just so if I needed access to your phone, I can access it. But I'm never going to pick up your phone. And don't start spying on them. Don't start spying on them. They will know. Because my friend's daughter actually told my daughter that I went on Snapchat, but because my parents did not trust me. So I might as well just do it. That's what she told her. Right? So you don't trust me. So I'm just going to take on that. So we have to be really careful that we model what we say, because children often do as we do, not only as we say. So you don't want them to be on their phone 24 hours of the day. Then you too don't be on your phone every minute of the day. When they are talking to you, give them eye contact, put your phone down, because you come today, like, I'm talking to you, put your phone down. But they were talking to you before you had your phone. You didn't put it down. So true modeling is very, very good. Trust them. And if they let you down, because they will, that is the truth. I've been talking to my daughter even before she got to secondary school. There are times I was like, you are on Snapchat, or was it TikTok, one of them. And she was like, oh, yeah, but I told you not to go on it. We had an agreement that you're not going to go on it. So we sit down and we talk about it. So from then, we have arranged consequences. If that happen again, there will be consequences. If it's to take your phone for 24 hours, then so be it. So is having that agreement with them. Because when you go down them the hard way they went down on us, your children will keep secret from you. They will change their name. You cannot secretly follow them. You will not even know it's your daughter that is the machine girl. Or you wouldn't know that they are the one. So you have to be really, really careful. Keep that open dialogue. Teach them, like I said, with real life stories. Put parental controls on there as well. And encourage them not to give their numbers to people that they don't know. People that are not your friends, they have no reason having your number. Don't give them your number. So my daughter knows that I'm not supposed to give my numbers to people. If I give it to you, I know we are good friends. So it's just building it up. And when situation arise, I'm sure Mr. Ade will know this, when troubleshooting arises in the digital world, that's the best way to learn. If there is no troubleshooting, you never know that, okay, this problem is there, right? So when you catch them unaware and they let you down, correct them, and then you put system in place. Just keep building on it. That's the best way to go about it, because there's so many things out there right now that we just have to keep learning. Technology is now our friend. We have to befriend it and show our children the best way to use it and leverage on it. I'll yield my mic.
Thank you so much for that. I think that's really rich. And if we go through the recordings from the webinars, we'll also see some of the points that Sonia has raised and some of the practical tips. And we got lots of resources from the panelists from those two sessions as well, which are also available on the Parents web app. So on the Parents resource page rather, but also subsequently on the Parents web app. So I'd encourage all of us to engage with the content, because one of the things that also struck me from that session was the tips for staying safe online. To be honest, the same tips for staying safe offline, because issues around keep your information private, don't talk to strangers, or don't share private information with strangers, there are things we should also not be doing offline. So there are lots of important tips there for general safety, and also safety for us, even as adults, because to be honest, adults also fall prey online. So there are tips for us to learn for ourselves, even as we learn for keeping our children safe online. I think it's only fair that I ask all of you if you want to have one last word before we close. I'll go alphabetically this time, hoping that I know my ABCs. So I'll start with Adi.
Yeah, thank you all for it's been an interesting discussion, quite deep and thoughtful. I think my last comment is more of a question, actually. We talk about young people in general, I mean, cultural inclusivity and awareness and so on. I'm wondering if at some point we should have a discussion that focuses on the differences between young boys, or boys and girls, actually. I have no perspective because I only have one daughter, but I'm pretty sure, just talking to friends and family, that they always complain differently about the complaints or the challenges they have with boys, totally different from the one they have with their daughters. And I'm just wondering if this is a myth or if it's reality. I'd like to, be involved in a discussion at some point. Obviously not today, but yeah.
Thank you very much for that. I mean, I teach law and gender, and one of the first classes we talk about boys, girls, and then somebody tells me, "Oh no, my boys play differently from my girls," and I'm thinking, is that a conversation we're having today? So I'm sure there'll be lots of interest in that and definitely something to look into because on a more serious note, we do hear anecdotal evidence of differences in behaviors, but also the challenges that they experience and definitely the kinds of support that they would need. Some people would say girls mature more quickly or faster than boys. So is that true? Is that a myth? So we've got an assignment there to find the experts to come speak to us on that one.
Be good. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So this time round, I'll go with A for ABS.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a very, very good use of my time this evening. So thank you for putting this together, Betty. And I also want parents to know that parenting is not a sprint, it's a marathon. I will just keep learning along as we go. And please don't keep quiet when things are happening to you because there are chances that it's happening to the next person. But because we are all quiet, we don't know. So we should learn to share useful tips with one another and attend things where these webinars are being organized. Attend it the way we attend all one base. It should be very, very useful. Thank you so much once again. I yield my mic.
Thank you. Just for a bit of context, Owambe is like parties. So I think essentially the way you would want to go to a nice party where there's good food, music, dancing, lovely people, we should also take the webinars as importantly as well. A. Well, the other A is not the real A for the name. It's the B for Bumi. So over to you, Bumi.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Petty. I've enjoyed every bit of today's session. I think I'm just going to drop a bit of what Janice, founder of Safer Internet Day, what she said, and that would be my last word to parents. We need to learn to be citizens in a digitally rich world. Resilience is at the heart of digital citizenship. When children give a lot of information online, they're leaving a very large footprint, and the footprint has data, and that can and could be used to profile them. So while we are, there's so much we've discussed today, is good for us as parents, like Sonia said, to take time out and to keep learning, understand our children, understand the world we are in, and seek and attend webinars like this where we can learn more, gain more information, and support our children adequately. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chioma.
It's been a real insightful conversation this evening. I think a few final things to say is you're not alone. There is help out there because I do think something that was mentioned at the beginning, how a lot of us, the secrecy, we suffer in silence. So find a community like Africanus, learn, and know that there is help out there and you're not alone. And those children, whether they're as young as Dr. Petty's, I think, or as big as mine, they do grow up eventually, and then they turn 6 foot like mine. So I think they might seem small now, but they do grow. They do grow. So yeah, just hang on in there, and you will get through. I think, like Abby said, that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So hang on in there. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lily.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation that we had today, and of course, I learned a lot of things. Moving away so far from family, I think having a community, a support system is so very important because these are the people that, if we want to talk to family, sometimes a phone call is not enough. You need to be in front of that person and, tell and cry and tell them everything that's happening to you. So I really appreciate what Africaners have done. And it is a form of support system that we have, what I have. So I am really grateful for all the information that I have today, especially in terms of child protection. I am again an Asian parent. I have those, I have those apps in my son's handphone. I have a tracking app on his handphone, so I know where he is. Um, but I did not think about privacy and trust, which connects to trust. So I will do research on that. So that's a new thing that I learned today. So thank you so much.
Amazing. What can I say? Really, I have definitely found today's session to be informative, insightful, and from the sound of it, I think it's been similar for you all as well. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much. Thank you so much to all of you, distinguished. I don't want to call you panelists. I would say friends and colleagues because really, it's been like a family discussion. Just let's have this conversation, and I would say let's do this more. Of course, we'll do it again, but really, thank you for being here and for reflecting so openly not only on the messages from the past sessions, but on your experiences, giving of yourself, sharing the experiences you've been through as well. I think it's really powerful. So thank you, all of you. And I would say to everyone who's watching, listening, remember that we have the webinar recordings, we've got the podcast and other relevant resources on our Afrikindness webpage. And you can continue to join us online when we have the online events, but also offline to explore the latest resources and opportunities for enhancing our parenting superpowers, as I like to call it. Because at the end of the day, that's all we can do to effectively support and also guide our children and wards to become kind model citizens wherever they may go. Now, we have very interesting research coming through from our Afrikindness research team, which we'll encourage you to also engage with. Because we cannot emphasize enough the importance of staying up to date with the current research findings on everything parenting, children's support, whether it's online safety, inclusive learning, whatever we call it. There's always research which we need to engage with and keep up to date with. It is just as important that we also take part in the research activities because that's the only way that research will reflect our voices, our experiences, our context, but also lead to solutions that are actually effective and adapted for ourselves. So we would encourage you whenever there's a call for us to get involved in research that's important for the community as parents, as guardians of children, that we're also open to exploring those opportunities. Well, that's it from us today. But before we go, I'd like to let you know that we have other events coming up. Right in September, we're going to have a session on safeguarding, which is a very important issue. Not only because it is the start of the new school term, but because safeguarding comes up not only in schools, but also in homes, but other public spaces, whether children go swimming, they go to sports clubs, they go dancing, wherever they go, there's always safeguarding issues which we need to be aware of. At the end of the day, our children's safety is our primary responsibility. So we'll invite you to engage in that webinar. We'll post the details for registration and hear the experts speak about safeguarding issues. We would encourage you to follow us on our social media pages and as much as you can, also join our dedicated parent team volunteers or in other ways support our activities however you think you're able to. To do this and to find out opportunities that exist, please do not hesitate to get in touch with us through emails or through social media. Would very much love to hear from you. With that, I'd like to say a very big thank you again to everyone here for a very brilliant, informative, and engaging session. Thank you for joining us at Afrikindness Parent Connects. Thank you to the wonderful audience who are now watching, listening, and hopefully will engage with us through their comments, questions, and feedback on today's session. And let's not forget, let us continue to connect with each other to live our best lives and to thrive as parents. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good
Well,
evening.
thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Yeah.